All right, Larry Krueger here for the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show. We're on the road headed to spring training to see a little Giants baseball. All right, let's talk a little 49ers, though. A lot of news coming out about both Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel being on the trade block. So Ian Rappaport is now sharing it that the 49ers, are looking for trades and are willing to trade Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk. Mike Silver said the 49ers would like to trade Aiyuk. I'm skeptical whether or not somebody's actually going to take on that contract. But let's talk about that. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out there in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. This video is also, in this spring training trip, is brought to you by LearnKey and Clawdaddy Arcades. And both links are in the description. And we'll talk more about them throughout the week. And thanks to both of those companies for sponsoring our trip to spring training. All right, let's hear from John Lynch. John Lynch spoke earlier this week at the Combine in Indianapolis, and here's what John had to say.
Update on Brandon Aiyuk. There was also a report from the Combine that teams are poking around, interested in trading for him. Is there any interest?
Yeah, that typically happens with really good players. I remember, I think 2 years ago, having similar conversations. You get calls, and you always listen to calls. And I think since Kyle and I've been here, we've been, certainly a top five, I believe, number 2 cash spending team. In the last 5 years, I think or 4 years. Going into the 4th year, I think we're the 4th highest cash spending team. So we're at some point you have to reset a little bit, or at least recalibrate. You can't just keep pressing the pedal. And I think there's some good that can come out of it. We need to get younger. I think we're the oldest team in football, trying to make a run at the deal last year, and I think it's good to constantly get younger. Our draft class last year was a great move towards that. We'll have 4 picks in the top 100. If the comp picks happen like we see it, that's always a calculation. We'll have 10 picks overall, and we're excited about adding more youth to a great core of players that we already have.
So there you go, a little bit of John Lynch right there. He was asked about Brandon Aiyuk, and, he said, hey, we need to get younger. We can't keep putting the gas pedal down as far as our spending. We need to get younger. He's like, the upside of this is that we need to get younger. So it sounds to me, I'm just reading the tea leaves. John Lynch told us that a lot of people were like, oh, the 49ers are going to release Deebo Samuel. John Lynch told us in December they weren't going to release Deebo Samuel, that they were going to try to trade Deebo Samuel, that they don't give away good players, and they view Deebo as a good player. It's interesting listening to Rap Sheet talk about Deebo, because he's like, oh, yeah, he's only 28, and he's okay, but, he's an older 28. But it sounds to me like Deebo and Aiyuk are both very much available, and that the 49ers are not just willing, but actually maybe eager to move both contracts off their books and to get some form of draft pick compensation. Now, this is an interesting thing on a lot of fronts. Why? Well, Deebo was one of the 49ers' better players and has been one of the 49ers' better players, and I can't imagine that he's going to fetch a whole lot as far as draft pick compensation in a trade. Okay, so that's one. Then there's Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk is the 49ers' number 1 receiver. They're on the verge of paying Brock Purdy a brand new contract, which is going to have probably close to, if not surpassing, $100 million in guarantees. In some ways, I get the feeling that the 49ers feel like they have to move off of Aiyuk to have the cash flow to pay Purdy. But, man, that seems like a real hard sell, does it not? Hey, Brock, come sign here, and by the way, because we're paying you, we're now going to trade your number 1 receiver. But it sounds like that's the direction they're going. And it also sounds like there may be interested teams in Brandon Aiyuk, despite the fact that he's coming off of an ACL an MCL and a meniscus tear, and probably isn't going to be back by week 1. And there's a chance that he won't be back for the beginning of the year. So I got to think that trading Debo is not going to bring you a big haul as far as draft picks. I got to think trading Aiyuk, despite his talent and obvious ability, because of his injury situation, I find it really hard to believe they're going to get big-time draft pick compensation for him either. Is it possible that they would trade these guys together? And, a team like Washington or Pittsburgh, who seems somewhat desperate for a receiver, would they take Aiyuk and Debo? If you traded Aiyuk and Debo, would you get, a pretty decent draft pick? I mean, it's really hard to say. It's all speculative at this point. We know Debo was a good player and is in kind of the twilight. We know Aiyuk is an excellent player and is not in the twilight of his career, but he is coming off of a major injury. And is he going to be diminished off that injury? Is he going to suit up this year? Is he going to suit up for half the year? I mean, there's a lot of unknowns with Brandon Aiyuk. So both guys, the 49ers would be selling low on both guys if they move them. And I got to think that even if you combined them, you probably wouldn't get more than, I can't think you'd get more than a high day 3 pick. I mean, if you want to move Debo and you want to move Aiyuk, would the Commanders give you Luke McCaffrey and a 4th round pick? That to me sounds like fair value. Maybe you want a couple picks on day 3. Maybe Luke McCaffrey and a 4th and a 5th. Maybe Luke McCaffrey and a 4th and a 6th. I always throw Luke McCaffrey out there because if the Commanders were trading for Debo and Aiyuk, they have Terry McLaurin, they have De'Ami Brown, they have some other guys. Do they even need Luke McCaffrey? And I'm just thinking 49ers are looking to get younger and cheaper, and obviously they have Christian under contract. They're close with the family. Would they take Luke McCaffrey, who did some decent things this year, for the Commanders? I thought there was moments where he looked pretty good. So, I don't know. I mean, it's all speculation at this point. But where there's smoke, there's often fire, and there's an awful lot of smoke right now. It really, the Niners have acknowledged that Debo wants out and that they're going to try to send him somewhere. They didn't sound like they were in a rush to cut him. It sounded like they would prefer to trade him. So is there a market for Debo? And if so, what is it? And then the Aiyuk stuff with both Mike Silver saying that the Niners, would like to get out from underneath the Aiyuk money. And then, somebody else said, well, Mike, wouldn't they like to get rid of all the guys who make a lot of money and this and that? And he's like, well, yeah, but I mean, they'd really like to get out of the Aiyuk money. So I don't know who his source is, but now Ian Rappaport is saying that the 49ers are shopping Aiyuk. So you got to think that it absolutely is legit. So, I mean, all I would say is, stick around, stay near the phone. We may have updates here. We may have to stop on the road to Scottsdale and update this again. But that's what it sounds like. It sounds like the 49ers are on the verge of trading both Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk for some combination of players or picks, younger players. Obviously, picks are younger players. They want to get younger. Go back and listen to the beginning of this video when we played the Lynch cut from the Combine. Chase Sr. asks him directly about the Aiyuk rumors, and he doesn't really address them, but then he goes into a long diatribe about the benefits of getting younger and cheaper and how you can't just keep spending at the rate they were spending. Guys, it sounds to me like Debo's gone. It sounds to me like Aiyuk's gone. And it sounds to me like the 49ers are going to get multiple day 3 draft choices in an effort to get younger and cheaper. Now, will they turn around and draft a Luther Burden, draft a Tetaroa McMillan, that's possible. Those guys potentially could fall to them at 11. Do they turn around and try to, trade for a Garrett Wilson, who's a younger receiver? Possibly. Do they turn around and try to trade for a T. Higgins? I don't know. I really don't know. It's not a stellar year for wide receivers in the draft. But as I said, Luther Burden could be there at 11. Tetaroa McMillan could be there at 11. If they want to go younger, this is the way to go younger. You trade Aiyuk, you trade Debo, you get multiple day 3 picks, and then you invest in a maybe a receiver like a Darius Slayton in free agency, and then you turn around and invest in a Burden or a McMillan in the draft. The Niners are all, one thing Lynch said this week is like, hey, we like to stay one step ahead. So we're looking at, to fill next year's issues with who we draft this year. They could be looking at wide receiver very much so in this draft. In a draft where we thought they're looking O-line, D-line, linebacker, free safety, they very well could look wide receiver in the first round because of, moving on from Debo and Aiyuk. It's not a lock, but it sure sounds like the Niners are on the verge of moving on from not just Debo Samuel, but Brandon Aiyuk as well. All right, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. We're also brought to you this month by LearnKey. And of course, Kev reminds us our good friends at Claudette Arcades is a big sponsor of our spring training trip as well. Thanks to Claudette Arcades and LearnKey. And there are links in the description below where you can connect to either one of them. Thanks to both of them for sponsoring our trip to Scottsdale. And thanks to all of you for supporting The Croup Show on YouTube.